Why does everyone assume they know who belongs? She stepped into the training yard wearing a faded t-shirt and carrying a worn backpack, her hair tied low and simple. To the gathered recruits, she looked like someone who'd taken a wrong turn on the way to the supply depot. The laughter started immediately. Sharp, cutting. The kind that fills a room and makes you feel smaller with every second. Someone muttered loud enough for her to hear that the army must be taking volunteers from the backstage crew now. She didn't respond. She just stood there, hands loose at her sides, watching them with eyes that gave nothing away. This is Olivia Mitchell, and she doesn't belong here. At least that's what they thought. She'd arrived in a beat-up pickup truck, paint chipped, tires caked with mud from some forgotten back road. Nobody would have guessed she came from one of the wealthiest families in the country, raised in a world of private tutors and gated estates. But Olivia didn't carry that world with her. No designer labels, no polished nails, just plain clothes that looked like they'd been washed 100 times and boots so scuffed you'd think they'd walked 1,000 miles. Her backpack held together by a single stubborn strap. But it wasn't just her appearance that set her apart. It was her stillness. The way she stood with her hands in her pockets, watching the chaos of the NATO training camp unfold around her, like she was waiting for a signal only she could hear. The first day was brutal. Captain Harrow, the head instructor, was a mountain of a man with a voice that could stop a riot. He paced the yard, sizing up the cadets, his boots grinding gravel beneath him. When his eyes locked on Olivia, he stopped, pointed. "You," he barked. "What's your deal? Supply crew get lost," the group snickered. A girl named Tara, blonde ponytail sharp as a blade, whispered to the cadet beside her just loud enough to be heard. "Bet she's here to check a box. Gender quota, right?" More laughter. Olivia didn't blink. She looked at Harrow, her face calm, her voice steady. "I'm a cadet, sir." Harrow snorted, waving her off like she was a minor inconvenience. "Get in line then. Don't slow us down." But here's the thing about being underestimated. It starts quietly. A joke, a glance, a dismissal so casual you almost miss it, and then it grows. It becomes the air you breathe, the weight you carry, the story everyone writes about you before you even open your mouth. During the first meal in the mess hall, Olivia carried her tray to a corner table, away from the chatter and the noise. The room buzzed with recruits swapping stories, their voices loud, their egos louder. A guy named Derek, lean and cocky with a fresh buzz cut, spotted her sitting alone. He grabbed his tray, strutted over, and dropped it on her table with a clatter that made nearby heads turn. "Yo, lost girl," he said, loud enough to make sure everyone heard. "This ain't a soup kitchen." "You sure you're not here to wash dishes?" the group behind him erupted. Olivia paused, her fork halfway to her mouth, and looked at him. Her voice didn't waver. "I'm eating." Derek leaned in, smirking. "Yeah, well, eat faster. You're taking up space real soldiers need." He flicked her tray. Mashed potatoes splattered across her shirt. The room howled with laughter. Olivia wiped the mess with a napkin, her hands slow and deliberate, her eyes never leaving her plate. She took another bite like he wasn't even there. And that's when something shifted, not in the room, in her. The warm-ups were designed to break you. Push-ups until your arms shook. Sprints that burned your lungs raw. Burpees in the dirt under a sun that showed no mercy. Olivia kept pace, her breathing steady, but her shoelaces kept slipping loose. They were old, frayed, barely holding her boots together. During a sprint, a guy named Lance jogged up beside her. Lance was the group's golden boy, broad-shouldered with a grin that said he'd never lost at anything. "Yo, thrift store," he called, loud enough for the whole line to hear. "Your shoes giving up, or is that just you?" Laughter rippled through the group like a wave. Olivia didn't respond. She knelt, retied her laces with quick, precise fingers, and stood. But as she did, Lance bumped her shoulder hard. She stumbled. Her hands hit the mud. Her knees sank into the wet earth. The group howled. "What's that, Mitchell?" Lance said, his voice dripping with mockery. "You signing up to clean the floors or just be our punching bag?" Olivia got up, wiped her palms on her pants, and ran on. Not a word. The laughter followed her all morning. But something was building, something none of them could see. During a break, Olivia sat on a wooden bench pulling a granola bar from her bag. Tara sauntered over with two other cadets, her arms crossed, her voice syrupy with fake concern. Olivia, right? So like, where are you even from? Did you win a contest to be here? Her friends giggled, one covering her mouth like it was all too funny. Olivia took a bite, chewed slowly, and looked up. I applied, she said, her voice flat like she was statting the weather. Tara's smile tightened. Okay, but why? She pressed, leaning in. You don't exactly scream elite soldier. I mean, look at your everything. She waved a hand at Olivia's muddy t-shirt, her plain brown hair. Olivia set her granola bar down, leaned forward just enough to make Tara flinch. I'm here to train, she said, not to make you feel better about yourself. Tara froze, her cheeks reddening. Whatever, she muttered, turning away. Weirdo. But the camp wasn't done with Olivia yet. Not even close. The navigation drill was hell in the woods. Cadets had to cross a forested ridge, map in hand, under a strict time limit. Olivia moved alone, her compass steady, her steps quiet against the pine needles. A group of 4 cadets, led by a wiry guy named Kyle, spotted her checking her map under a tree. Kyle, who'd been trying to steal Lance's spotlight, saw his chance. Hey, Dora the Explorer, he called, his voice cutting through the quiet. You lost already, or you just out here picking flowers? His group laughed, circling closer. Olivia folded her map, her fingers deliberate, and kept walking. Kyle jogged up, snatching the map from her hands. Let's see how you do without this, he said, tearing it in half and tossing the pieces into the wind. The others cheered. Olivia stopped. Her eyes followed the scraps as they fluttered away. She looked at Kyle, her face blank. Hope you know your way back, she said. Then she turned and kept moving, her pace unchanged. Kyle's laughter faltered. But his group kept jeering, their voices echoing through the trees. And then came the moment that changed everything. The rifle disassembly drill came that afternoon. It was supposed to be a wake-up call. The cadets had 2 minutes to take apart an M4 carbine, clean it, and reassemble it. Most struggled, their fingers fumbling with the pins, swearing as parts slipped through their hands. Lance finished in a messy 1 minute 43 seconds, grinning like he'd aced a test. Tara scraped by at 1:59, her hands shaking as she snapped the last piece into place. Then Olivia stepped up. She didn't rush. Didn't hesitate. Her hands moved like they were following a script written years ago. Pin out, bolt free, parts laid out in a perfect grid, 52 seconds, not a single mistake. Sergeant Polk, the instructor, stared at the timer, then at her. Mitchell, he said, his voice low. Where'd you learn to do that? Olivia wiped her hands on her pants and stepped back. Practice, she said, her eyes on the ground. The training screen played a slow-motion replay. Every move clean, no wasted motion. A lieutenant nearby muttered to Polk. Her hands didn't shake, that special forces steady. Lance overheard and scoffed. So she can clean a gun, he said, loud enough for Olivia to hear. Doesn't mean she can fight. But during the break, a quiet cadet named Alina, who'd been watching Olivia closely, slipped her a spare map from her own kit. You'll need this, Alina whispered, her eyes darting to make sure no one saw. Olivia took it, nodded once, and tucked it into her bag without a word. Whispers started after that. A few cadets glanced at her during the next break, trying to piece her together like a puzzle with missing pieces. Who was she? Where had she trained? Why was she here? But Olivia never answered questions she wasn't asked. She just kept moving, kept training, kept her head down and her hands steady. But there was something about her they hadn't seen yet, something hidden, something that would turn this entire camp upside down. What happens when you push someone too far? The obstacle course was designed to separate the capable from the pretenders. Rope climbs, wall vaults, a mud crawl under barbed wire that left your elbows raw and bleeding. Olivia moved through it with a rhythm that seemed almost meditative, her breathing controlled, her movements efficient, but Lance wasn't going to let her have a quiet day. He'd been watching her all morning, his jaw tight, his pride bruised from the rifle drill. When she reached the rope climb, he was waiting at the base. Hey, Mitchell, he called up as she started her ascent. You gonna cry when you fall? The group around him laughed. Olivia kept climbing, hand over hand, her arms burning but her grip solid. Lance grabbed the rope and shook it hard. She swayed, her body jerking to one side, but she didn't let go. She adjusted, kept climbing, reached the top, rang the bell, and came back down. Lance's face went red. "Lucky," he muttered, but it wasn't luck, it was control, the kind you can't fake. During a break, one of the younger cadets, a kid named Sam, approached Olivia as she sat alone against a fence. He hesitated, then sat down a few feet away, not saying anything at first. Finally, he spoke. "How do you do it?" he asked. "Do what?" Olivia replied, not looking up. "Ignore them." She was quiet for a moment, picking at a loose thread on her pants. "I don't ignore them," she said. "I just don't let them decide who I am." Sam nodded slowly, like he was trying to understand. "Does it ever stop?" Olivia looked at him then, her eyes softer than he'd seen before. "No," she said, "but you get stronger." Days blurred together. More drills, more mockery. More moments where Olivia stood alone while the group circled like wolves, but something was building beneath the surface. A tension. A question everyone was starting to ask. Who was she really? During a hand-to-hand combat drill, cadets were paired off to practice defensive maneuvers. Olivia was matched with a guy named Travis who had a reputation for being aggressive in the ring. He grinned at her as they squared up. "Try not to cry, Mitchell," he said. The instructor blew the whistle. Travis lunged. Olivia sidestepped. He lunged again. She deflected. He got frustrated, swinging wild. She ducked, stepped in, and took his legs out from under him with a sweep so clean it looked choreographed. Travis hit the mat hard, the wind knocked out of him. The group went quiet. Olivia stood over him, her face blank. "You okay?" she asked. Travis stared up at her, stunned. She offered a hand. He didn't take it. But the mockery didn't stop. If anything, it got worse. Lance, feeling his status threatened, doubled down. During a meal, he walked past Olivia's table and knocked her water bottle onto the floor. "Oops," he said, not looking back. Tara and her friends whispered louder, their laughter sharper. Derek made a show of moving to another table whenever Olivia sat down. "Don't want the bad luck rubbing off," he said. The camp had turned into a gauntlet. Every day was a test. Not of her skills, but of her resolve. Could she keep going? Could she keep standing when everyone wanted her to fall? And then came the day that shattered everything. The combat simulation was the most intense drill of the training cycle. Cadets had to navigate a mock battlefield, complete objectives, and avoid getting tagged by instructors with paint rounds. It was chaos by design. Smoke, noise, confusion. Olivia moved through the simulation with precision, her head low, her movements calculated. She reached an objective point, a flag she needed to secure, when Lance appeared from the smoke. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was supposed to be on the other side of the field, but he'd followed her. "Thought you could hide, Mitchell," he said, stepping closer. Olivia didn't respond. She reached for the flag. Lance grabbed her arm. "I'm talking to you," he said, his voice low and dangerous. She looked at him, her eyes cold. "Let go." He didn't. He pulled her back hard enough to make her stumble. "What are you gonna do about it?" he said, and that's when it happened. Olivia moved so fast it was almost invisible. She twisted, broke his grip, and in one fluid motion she had him on the ground, her knee on his chest, her hand at his throat. Not squeezing, just there. A promise. Lance's eyes went wide. He tried to push her off, but she didn't budge. "Touch me again," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "and you'll regret it." She let him go, stood up, grabbed the flag, and walked away. Lance lay there in the dirt, gasping, his face pale. The instructors watching from the observation tower went silent. One of them, a lieutenant, leaned forward. "Did you see that?" he said. "That wasn't basic training, that was something else." After the simulation, Olivia returned to the barracks. She sat on her bunk, her hands still steady, her breathing calm. But inside, something had shifted. She'd been patient, she'd been quiet, but there's only so much a person can take. Tara walked in, saw Olivia sitting there, and froze. For the first time, she didn't have anything to say. Olivia looked up. Their eyes met, and Tara turned and walked out. The balance of power in the camp was starting to shift. The cadets who'd mocked her were starting to feel it. Something was coming, something they weren't ready for. But what they didn't know was that Olivia Mitchell had a past, a history that explained everything, and it was about to surface in the most unexpected way. What does it take to make people see the truth? The next morning, the camp felt different. The air was heavier, the laughter quieter. Lance was nowhere to be seen. Word had spread about what happened in the combat simulation. Not the full story, just whispers, enough to make people look at Olivia differently, not with respect. Not yet, but with caution. Like she was a puzzle they couldn't solve. Captain Harrow called the cadets into formation. His face was stern, his voice sharp. "Yesterday's simulation revealed something," he said, packing in front of the group. "Some of you are not taking this seriously. Some of you are treating this like a game." His eyes scanned the crowd and landed on Olivia for a moment. "We're here to train soldiers, not children." The group shifted uncomfortably. Harrow dismissed them, but the tension lingered. During the midday break, Olivia sat alone as always. But this time Sam sat down beside her, then Alina, then a few others. They didn't say much, just sat there, a quiet act of solidarity. Tara watched from across the yard, her face tight. Derek muttered something to Lance, who was back from wherever he'd been, but Lance didn't laugh. He just looked at Olivia, his jaw clenched. Something had changed. The camp was dividing. Those who saw Olivia for what she was, and those who refused to. At afternoon, a hand-to-hand combat drill turned into something more. The instructor paired Olivia with Lance again. The group held its breath. Lance stepped into the ring, his face hard, his fists clenched. "Let's see what you got, Mitchell," he said. The whistle blew. Lance came at her fast, throwing a punch aimed at her head. Olivia ducked, sidestepped, and countered with a strike to his ribs. He grunted, staggered back, came at her again. She blocked, deflected, moved like water. Lance was all aggression. Olivia was all control. He swung wild. She caught his arm, twisted, and brought him down hard. The mat shook. The group gasped. Olivia stood over him, her face calm. "Get up," she said. Lance didn't move. He just stared at her, breathing hard, his pride shattered. The instructor stepped in. "That's enough." He looked at Olivia. "Mitchell, where'd you learn to fight like that?" She didn't answer, just walked off the mat. The group parted as she passed. No one laughed. No one whispered. They just watched. Because they were starting to realize that Olivia Mitchell wasn't who they thought she was. And maybe, just maybe, they'd made a mistake. But the real revelation was still coming. The next drill was a formation exercise. Cadets had to move in synchronized lines, responding to commands with precision. It was supposed to be simple. But Lance, still seething from the combat drill, decided to make it difficult. As Olivia moved into position, he deliberately stepped in front of her, blocking her path. She stopped, adjusted, moved around him. He did it again. The instructor shouted a command. Olivia broke formation to avoid a collision. Harrow saw it. "Mitchell," he barked. Breaking formation, "Drop and give me 50. Olivia dropped, started her push-ups. The group watched, some with smirks, others with discomfort. But as she reached 30, Lance walked past and kicked dirt onto her hands. "Oops," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Olivia paused, looked up, her eyes locked on his. And in that moment, something in the air shifted. She finished her push-ups, stood, wiped her hands on her pants, and walked toward Lance. The group went silent. Lance stood his ground, but there was uncertainty in his eyes. Olivia stopped in front of him, close, too close. "You want to know who I am?" she said, her voice low but carrying across the yard. "You want to know why I'm here?" Lance didn't respond. Olivia pulled her t-shirt collar down slightly, revealing the edge of something on her back. A tattoo, dark, intricate, but before anyone could see it clearly, she let the fabric fall back. "Ask your instructors," she said. And walked away. Lance stood there, frozen. The group buzzed with whispers. What was that? What did she show him? Harrow, watching from the observation post, went pale. He grabbed his radio. "Get Colonel Hayes, now." Within an hour, a jeep pulled into the camp. A man stepped out, older, gray hair, hard eyes. He wore a uniform with insignia most cadets didn't recognize. He walked straight to Harrow, who snapped to attention. "Sir," Harrow said. The colonel didn't respond. He scanned the yard until his eyes found Olivia. He started walking toward her. The cadets watched, confused. Olivia stood near the fence, her back to the group. The colonel approached, stopped a few feet away. "Mitchell," he said. She turned. Their eyes met, and then slowly the colonel raised his hand and saluted. The entire camp froze. Cadets stared, their mouths open. Instructors stopped mid-command. Even Harrow looked stunned. Olivia returned the salute, crisp, perfect. The colonel stepped closer, his voice low but audible. "It's been a long time, Ghost Viper." The words hit like a shockwave, Ghost Viper. The name echoed through the camp. Some cadets had heard of it, a covert unit, elite, classified, the kind of soldiers who didn't exist on paper. Tara's face went white. Lance took a step back. Derek looked like he might be sick. The colonel turned to face the group. "This soldier," he said, his voice firm, "has more combat experience than all of you combined. She's been in places you'll never know about, done things you couldn't imagine. And she's here because she chose to be, not because she had to prove anything." He looked at Olivia. "You want to see her credentials? Look at her back." Olivia hesitated. Then slowly she turned around, pulled her t-shirt up just enough to reveal her back. And there it was, a tattoo, a viper, coiled, surrounded by symbols only those in the know would recognize, the mark of Ghost Viper, the mark of someone who'd earned their place in the shadows. The group stared in stunned silence. The colonel lowered his voice, speaking to Olivia now. "You didn't have to come here." Olivia nodded. "I know," she said, "but they needed to see it." The colonel smiled, just a little. "They see it now." He turned and walked back to his jeep, drove away. The dust settled, and the camp was never the same again. Lance stood there, his face pale, his hands shaking. Tara backed away slowly, like she wanted to disappear. Derek couldn't meet Olivia's eyes because they'd mocked her, pushed her, dismissed her, and now they knew they'd been wrong, completely, utterly wrong. Olivia pulled her shirt back down, turned to face the group, and said nothing. She didn't have to. The truth had spoken for her. How do you rebuild after the truth destroys everything you thought you knew? The camp felt like a different place. The laughter was gone, the mockery had vanished. In its place was a heavy, uncomfortable silence. The kind that settles when people realize they've crossed a line they can't uncross. Cadets walked past Olivia now with their heads down. Some mumbled apologies she didn't acknowledge, others just avoided her completely. The instructors treated her differently too, not with special treatment, just with respect. The kind earned, not given. Harrow pulled her aside after the colonel's visit. "Mitchell," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "I need to ask, why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you tell us?" Olivia looked at him. "Would it have mattered?" she said. Harrow opened his mouth, closed it. He didn't have an answer because she was right. If she'd walked in and announced her credentials, they would have dismissed her anyway, called her arrogant, said she was showing off. The only way they could see her was if they learned the hard way. Lance was a shell of himself. He avoided the training yard, showed up late to drills, and when he did participate, he was sloppy, distracted. During a briefing, one of the instructors asked him a question. He didn't respond, just stared at the floor. Word spread that he'd requested a transfer. Within a week, he was gone, reassigned to a desk job at some remote base. No one talked about it, but everyone knew. Tara was different. She didn't leave. She stayed, but she was quieter now. During a meal, she sat at a table far from Olivia, picking at her food, her eyes red like she'd been crying. Alina, who'd been one of the few to sit with Olivia during her isolation, approached Tara. "You okay?" Alina asked. Tara shook her head. "I messed up," she said. "I really messed up." Alina didn't argue, she just sat down. "So fix it," she said. Tara looked at her. "How?" Alina nodded toward Olivia, who was sitting alone at her usual spot. "Start there." But apologizing isn't simple. Not when you've spent weeks tearing someone down. Tara stood outside the barracks that night packing, trying to find the words. Finally, she walked in. Olivia was on her bunk reading something on her phone. Tara stopped a few feet away. "Mitchell," she said, her voice shaking. Olivia looked up, waited. Tara swallowed. "I'm sorry," she said, "for everything, for what I said, for how I treated you. I was wrong." Olivia studied her for a moment. "Why are you apologizing?" she asked. Tara blinked, confused. Because I was terrible to you." Olivia nodded. "You were," she said, "but apologizing to me doesn't undo it, it just makes you feel better." Tara's face fell. "So, what do I do?" Olivia set her phone down. "Be better," she said. "That's all you can do." Tara stood there for a moment, then nodded. She left without another word, but something had shifted in her. The training continued, but now Olivia was no longer invisible. The instructors asked her to demonstrate techniques. Other cadets watched her closely, trying to learn from her movements. During a marksmanship drill, Olivia took her position on the range. The target was far. Wind was strong. Most cadets struggled to hit center mass. Olivia fired 5 rounds, 5 hits, all within a 2-inch grouping. The range officer stared at the target through his binoculars. "Mitchell," he called. "Where'd you qualify?" Olivia didn't look at him. I didn't, she said. The officer frowned. What do you mean? I trained outside the system, she said. No records. The officer nodded slowly like that explained everything, and in a way it did. But not everyone was ready to accept the new reality. Derek still held on to his resentment. During a break, he muttered to a group of cadets, "So she's some secret soldier, big deal, doesn't mean she's better than us." One of the cadets, a guy named Marcus, shook his head. "Man, let it go," Derek scoffed. "She didn't earn her place, she just had connections." Marcus stood up. "You saw what the colonel said, you saw her back. She earned it more than any of us." Derek looked around, realizing the group wasn't with him anymore. He walked off alone, bitter, unable to let go of his pride. Days passed. The camp settled into a new rhythm. Olivia didn't change. She was still quiet, still kept to herself. But now when she entered a room, people noticed, not with mockery, with awareness. She became an unofficial instructor, showing cadets techniques they wouldn't learn in standard training. How to move silently, how to read a room, how to stay calm under pressure. She didn't lecture, she just showed them, and they learned. Alina asked her one day, "Why are you helping us, after everything?" Olivia looked at her. "Because you're here to learn," she said, "and I'm here to teach. That's all that matters." But there was still one question no one dared to ask. What had Olivia done? What missions had she been on? What had she seen? One night Sam worked up the courage. He found Olivia sitting alone outside looking at the stars. "Can I ask you something?" he said. Olivia nodded. "What was it like?" he asked. "Being Ghost Viper." Olivia was quiet for a long time. "It was necessary," she finally said. "That's all." Sam waited, hopping for more, but that was all she gave. Because some stories aren't meant to be told. Some truths are carried, not shared. The camp's final evaluation was approaching, a test that would determine who graduated and who didn't. The cadets prepared, but the atmosphere was different now. Less arrogant, more focused. They'd learned something, not just from the training, but from watching Olivia, from realizing that strength doesn't announce itself. It just exists. And when the time came, the cadets who'd mocked her, who dismissed her, they understood. They'd been given a gift. The gift of seeing what real resilience looks like. And some of them, the ones willing to listen, would carry that lesson for the rest of their lives. What does it mean to stand when everyone else has fallen? The final evaluation came on a cold morning. The sky was gray, the air sharp. The cadets gathered in the yard, their faces tense. This wasn't just a test. It was the culmination of everything they'd endured. The drill was brutal. A full tactical simulation. Navigate hostile terrain, complete objectives, extract under fire. The instructors would be relentless. Mistakes would be costly. Olivia stood with the group, her face calm. Around her, cadets adjusted their gear, checked their weapons, whispered last-minute strategies. She just waited. Captain Harrow addressed them. "This is it," he said. "Everything you've learned, everything you've become, today you prove it." He looked at Olivia. "Mitchell, you'll lead Blue Team." The group went silent. "Lead, Olivia." Some cadets looked uncertain. Others nodded, accepting it. Tara was on Blue Team, so was Derek and Alina and Sam, a mix of those who'd mocked her and those who'd stood by her. Olivia stepped forward. "Listen up," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "We move fast, we move smart, nobody gets left behind, clear." The team nodded. Harrow watched, his arms crossed. He was testing her, but Olivia knew that. She'd been tested her whole life. The simulation began. Smoke filled the field. Blank rounds echoed. Instructors played enemy combatants, their tactics sharp. Blue Team moved through the chaos, Olivia at the front. She communicated with hand signals, quick, efficient. The team followed. They reached the first objective, a flag they needed to secure. Derek hesitated at the entry point. "There's too many of them," he said. Olivia looked at him. "There's always too many," she said. "We go anyway." She moved first. The team followed. They secured the flag. No casualties, but the drill wasn't over. The extraction point was a mile away through hostile terrain. Instructors would be waiting. Halfway through, Tara stumbled. Her ankle twisted on uneven ground. She went down, biting back a cry. The team stopped. Olivia knelt beside her. "Can you walk?" Tara tried, winced. "I don't think so," Derek spoke up. "We leave her, we'll never make it carrying dead weight." Olivia looked at him, her eyes cold. "No one gets left behind," she said. "That wasn't a suggestion." She handed her rifle to Alina. "Cover us." She pulled Tara's arm over her shoulder. "Sam, take her other side." Together they lifted Tara and kept moving. Derek shook his head but followed. The team pushed through the terrain, slower now but together. Instructors ambushed them near the extraction point. Blank rounds flew. The team took cover. Olivia set Tara down behind a barrier. Alina suppressing fire, Sam flank right, Derek stay with Tara. The team moved. Olivia led the counterattack, her movements precise, calculated. Within minutes the instructors called the ambush over. Blue team had won. They reached the extraction point. The simulation ended. The team collapsed, exhausted. Tara looked at Olivia, tears in her eyes. "You didn't have to do that," she said. Olivia shrugged. "Yes, I did." That evening the results were posted. Blue team scored the highest, not because they were the fastest, but because they worked together, because they didn't leave anyone behind. The other teams had lost members, left cadets behind to secure faster times. Blue team finished slower but intact. Harrow gathered the cadets. "Today," he said, "some of you learned what it means to be a soldier. It's not about being the best. It's about making sure your team survives." Blue team understood that. "The rest of you need to figure it out." But there was more. That night an officer approached Olivia. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low, "there's someone here for you." Olivia followed him to the camp entrance. A man stood waiting, tall, broad-shouldered, short-cropped hair. He wore a black jacket and jeans, no uniform, but the guard stepped back when he moved. The colonel was there too, his hands clasped behind his back. "General," he said, nodding to the man. The man didn't respond. He looked at Olivia, his eyes softening for a moment. She walked up to him, her face unreadable, stopped a few feet away. "You didn't have to come," she said. He tilted his head, almost smiling. "Yeah," he said, "I did." The cadets watching from a distance went quiet. Tara, standing nearby, dropped her water bottle. The plastic clattered on the ground. The colonel cleared his throat, addressing the group. "This is General Thomas Reed," he said, "Olivia's husband." The words hit like a shockwave. Olivia Mitchell wasn't just Ghost Viper. She was married to one of the highest-ranking military officials in the country. Reed didn't say anything else. He put a hand on Olivia's shoulder. They walked to the pickup she'd arrived in. The engine roared to life. They drove off, dust kicking up behind them. No one moved until the truck was gone. The fallout was swift. Tara's sponsorship with a defense contractor vanished after a video of her mocking Olivia went viral. It wasn't Olivia who posted it, just a cadet with a phone and a sense of justice. Tara left the camp a week later, her head down, her bags packed. Lance's reassignment wasn't the end for him either. His name came up in an internal review. He was discharged for conduct unbecoming. The others, the ones who'd laughed, who'd tossed insults, didn't face formal punishment, but they carried something heavier. Shame. The kind that lingers. The kind that makes you avoid mirrors. Olivia didn't return to the camp. Her name stayed on the instructor roster, but she never taught another session. Some said she was with Reed, running a training program no one could confirm. Others said she'd vanished, just like Ghost Viper. But the cadets who'd seen her, who'd watched her move, who'd felt the weight of her silence, they didn't forget. They told her story, passed it down, let it grow. Not a legend, not a myth, just the truth of a woman who didn't need to shout to be heard. Why does the past matter when the present demands everything? Years earlier, Olivia had been different, not softer but younger, her edges less defined. She'd trained in a compound nobody knew existed under a man whose name was never spoken. He'd chosen her not because of her family's money, but because of her quiet, because she listened, because she moved with purpose. For 6 years she'd learned his ways, the rifle, the silence, the way to stand so the world noticed without you saying a word. He'd given her the tattoo himself. The needle biting into her skin as he said, "This isn't a badge, it's a promise." She'd nodded, her jaw tight, and carried that promise ever since. The man who trained her was known only as Reyes. No rank, no record, just a name whispered in intelligence circles. He'd served in conflicts most people didn't know existed, trained operatives for missions that never made the news. Olivia had been his last student. He'd seen something in her, something she didn't see in herself yet. "You think too much about what others think," he'd told her once. "That'll get you killed." She'd learned to stop thinking about it, learn to move without doubt, learn to carry the weight of what needed to be done without letting it crush her. After Ray's died, Olivia had wandered, not aimless but searching. She'd taken contracts, worked with units that operated in the gray spaces between official and off the books. She'd been in places she couldn't name, done things she couldn't talk about, and through it all she'd carried that tattoo, that promise, until she met Thomas Reed. He was a captain then, leading a team in a conflict zone. Their paths crossed during an extraction mission gone wrong. Olivia had been embedded with a local unit. Reed's team was pinned down. She moved through the chaos, flanked the hostiles, and gave Reed's team the opening they needed. Afterward, Reed asked her name. She didn't give it, just nodded and disappeared. But he found her later, asked questions, learned her story, and saw what Rays had seen. They didn't fall in love quickly. It was slow, built on respect, on understanding, on shared scars. Reed knew what she'd done, what she'd been, and he didn't ask her to change. He just asked her to be. When they married, it was quiet, no ceremony, no guests, just two people who understood that some bonds don't need witnesses. Reed rose through the ranks. Olivia stepped back from the field, not because she had to, but because she chose to. She'd given enough. But the camp, the NATO training camp, that had been her choice. Reed had asked her why. "You don't have anything to prove," he'd said. She'd smiled, just a little. "I'm not proving anything," she'd said. "I'm teaching them something." And she had, not through lectures, not through speeches, but through being, through showing them that strength doesn't announce itself, that resilience is quiet, that dignity doesn't need an audience. Back in the camp, the days after her departure felt hollow. The cadets trained harder, but the energy was different. They'd seen something they couldn't unsee. During a night drill, one of the younger recruits, Sam, found an old photo in the barracks, tucked under a bunk. He held it up, squinting at the blurred man in the black jacket. "Who was she really?" he asked the group. No one answered. Sam slipped the photo into his pocket, not sure why, but feeling like it mattered. The consequences kept coming. The defense contractor who dropped Tara faced a PR nightmare when the video spread further. Their stock dipped. Online forums lit up with outrage. Captain Harrow was called into a meeting with the colonel. Nobody heard what was said, but Harrow was quieter after that, his orders less harsh, his eyes scanning the yard like he was looking for something he'd missed. Olivia's story didn't end with the camp. It spread, carried by the cadets, by the officers, by the whispers that followed her name. It reached people who'd been judged their whole lives, who'd been told they didn't belong. They heard about the woman who'd walked into a room full of scorn and walked out with a salute. They understood her silence, her steady hands, the way she didn't need to explain herself. Her story was theirs, a reminder that truth doesn't need a megaphone, it just needs time. In a small town in Montana, a woman named Claire read about Olivia online. Claire had been dismissed by her coworkers for years, told she wasn't leadership material. But after reading Olivia's story, Claire applied for a promotion, got it. In a high school in Texas, a girl named Maya was mocked for joining the ROTC program, told girls couldn't hack it. She kept training, kept showing up. And when someone asked why, she said, "Because I can." Stories like these rippled outward, not because Olivia wanted fame, but because people needed to see what quiet strength looked like. Years later, a documentary crew tried to find Olivia. They wanted to interview her, tell her story on camera. They tracked leads, followed rumors, but every trail went cold. Reed, now a high-ranking general, declined to comment. The cadets who'd trained with her gave interviews, but they spoke carefully, respectfully. They didn't reveal details, just impressions, just the feeling of being in her presence. The documentary aired without her, but her absence made it stronger. Because some people don't need to be seen to be felt. Some stories don't need endings. They just need to keep going. In the end, it wasn't about the tattoo, or the rifle drill, or the choke that dropped Lance. It was about Olivia's presence. The way she carried her pain, her past, her power, all without a word. She didn't need to prove herself. The world caught up, like it always does. And for everyone who'd ever been pushed aside, her story was a quiet promise. Your time's coming. Hold your ground, you're enough. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. it simply acts.